Good afternoon to you. Mark Suttoth, HurricaneTrack.com here Monday now, the 25th day of March, 2024. We got a big update today, a lot to talk about. Hurricane season news first. Then we're going to look at some severe weather, and yes, that is starting to ramp up again. Got to make sure people are paying attention with all these other distractions going on around us. And then 2 weeks from today, an absolutely incredible celestial event is going to take place. And if the weather will cooperate just this once, right, we could see an absolutely incredible, if the weather cooperates, it's a guarantee. If you're in the path of totality, an amazing sight in the sky as the moon passes in front of the sun and gives us a total eclipse. I'm going to take a look ahead at that and just make sure people are aware of what to look for. Also a really good website that you can follow for information about it. All right, so a big update today. Get a book out, start reading, whatever. Just a joke there. I want you to watch, but you can also listen. Then you can watch later. But let's get on with it. First, the anomalies map. This is always a day behind, so this is March 24th. And yes, the positive anomalies are still very prevalent in the Atlantic. The beginnings of the La Nina starting to take shape here in the equatorial Pacific, so not much change there. It's marching right towards where we thought it would. The subsurface, look at this. This is pretty pronounced now. Large area of subsurface cold relative to average starting to show up here in the equatorial Pacific. Look at these anomalies here. You're talking about the different gradations or gradients. What are we? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 levels? Really? Like we're already off the chart, so to speak? That's impressive. So yes, we're going to be in a La Nina probably sometime during the summer. And that combined with these very warm water temperatures relative to average in the Atlantic, you know the drill. We are more than likely going to have a very active season. But what we don't know is where what does form ends up. And I want to emphasize that. We don't know. We could have a 2010 type season where most everything stays east of the United States. Certainly have to worry about the Canadian Maritimes, Bermuda, the Azores. There's other areas outside the U.S., of course, but we don't know about the patterns. However, and I mentioned this in previous updates, some of the long-range models that we look at, these climate models, are suggesting, at least right now, a pretty strong Bermuda Azores high couplet, strong subtropical ridge is another way to say it, steering a lot of activity towards the west. And what's really going to be interesting is at the National Tropical Weather Conference 2 weeks from Wednesday down in South Padre Island in Texas, Dr. Phil Klotzbach will officially release the forecast from Colorado State University. Remember, they set the bar many, many years ago. Dr. Gray, now Dr. Klotzbach, has taken up the reins. And in that forecast will be the very important ACE prediction west of 70 degrees longitude, which is about right there. I think it's 70. The ACE west of 70, maybe it's 60. Bottom line is he's going to talk about the ACE that would occur in this part of the basin, not just basin-wide. ACE, of course, is accumulated cyclone energy. That is what matters in terms of impacts. A high ACE season with a lot of named storms means you probably are going to have a lot of impacts. But this early on, all of this forecasting and the anomalies and all the analogs, none of that really helps us to understand exactly who could get impacted. So let's just make that very clear. I just want to remind everybody. But boy, this is an interesting look, that La Nina waiting in the subsurface, the remnants here of the El Nino really starting to get chiseled away, and it's not going to be long that we will be in neutral and then eventually weak La Nina conditions. What about actual water temperatures? We've talked about anomalies for a while. I thought this was really interesting. This is off the mid-Atlantic and northeast coast. Look at this gradient right here, this temperature gradient, the difference in temperature over distance. And you can see the gradient in here of these isotherms really packed in there, very tight, so you get that sort of blackish color. And you go over to the anomalies map, and it really helps to explain why we are seeing that. Look right over here, very pronounced warmth butting up against very pronounced cold in the anomalies department. So very anomalous cold water on the northwest side of the Gulf Stream, But in the Gulf Stream, which is all along this area right through here, some pretty substantial anomalous warmth. And then when you look at the actual temperatures, you get that really neat gradient. There's your Gulf Stream snaking its way through right there. Water temperatures in the Gulf Stream in the 70s to near 80 degrees, but just north and west of that, it drops off very quickly, what we call a very steep temperature gradient. And in the atmosphere, we call that lapse rates, the change in temperature with height. And when that gets very steep, you tend to get some hail and obviously a lot of instability. But it's interesting over the northwest Atlantic here, how cold the water is up next to the land masses, but then south and east of that Gulf Stream, it's kind of that boundary there. I think it'll change once we get the Bermuda High set up and you get those easterly winds and then eventually southerly winds and everything mixes. You know, it'll be toasty as we head towards Memorial Day. But just something interesting that caught my eye. Also, the Gulf of Mexico, actual temperatures here. Remember, this is all in degrees Celsius. Most of science is. So the 26 Celsius isotherm, or line of equal temperature, roughly like that right now. So a pretty good chunk of the Gulf and most of the Bay of Campeche down here, warm enough to support tropical activity, but other things preclude that from happening, thank goodness. I think we could see something in May. It wouldn't surprise me. Not a prediction, I just think it's possible. And of course it is. We've had it, something in May, develop pretty much every year except the last couple of years. I know we didn't have anything last year. I think that's a little 26 Celsius isotherm by itself, a little island there. Bottom line, though, the Gulf is gradually warming. Any spring breakers out there, still a little too cold for you all, even in Florida, in my opinion. Well, what do I know? Maybe you don't care. Youngsters typically deal with the cold and extremes like that much better than us older folks. But anyhow, water temperatures on their way up. And then in terms of anomalies, the Gulf of Mexico generally running warmer than average. This is very easy to mix, so you can see some pretty quick and rapid fluctuations in Gulf anomalies. And I should have pointed this out. I forgot I had this graphic, honestly. There's that example. Look at that very warm Gulf Stream right through here. Talk about off the chart. Some of those water temperature anomalies, 4 to 5 Celsius warmer than average, butting right up against some very cold anomalies, almost off the chart, on the left side. So it's really, really interesting to see the two extremes right next to each other. I don't know what's causing it exactly. I don't know what that does to marine life out there. We haven't had much of a nor'easter season to speak of, so, you know, whatever. But it's just neat to see. And then again, when you can look at it from an anomaly perspective and then go over to the actual temperatures and you see that gradient. I'm just a weather geek, and that's just kind of cool to see. So I figured I would point it out. It doesn't have any impact on the upcoming hurricane season. Water temperatures are going to be plenty warm. We know that. It's just a matter of where does whatever form tend to track. Now, everybody's putting forecasts out, it seems, including WeatherTiger. Now, I do not know how to pronounce Ryan's last name, but the author of this, I'll get into it in just a minute. They put a big effort into this down in Tallahassee. Yeah, there's different agencies, commercial and otherwise, that put stuff out. There's very little follow-up later, no papers to explain what went wrong or what went right. And then you've got universities and other private agencies that do follow-up work, hindcasting, you name it. And just there's so many different forecasts. But I like this group. I like the way it is presented. And if you click on the link right here, this is what you get. I'll put a link to this in today's description. I like the whole focus here, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And Ryan here, Dr. Ryan, and again, I don't know exactly how you pronounce that last name. Maybe I'll bump into him at the National Hurricane Conference if he's there, and I can ask him. I just like to get the names right. I mean, my name is Sudduth, and it has been mispronounced more than you can imagine over the years. Anyway, pretty good setup in terms of what's happening out there. A lot of this stuff we've been talking about. Everybody's watching it. We all know about it. The record warmth in the main development region, the loss of the El Nino, so forth and so on. Water temperatures, very, very warm. And look at this. This is interesting. I found some nuggets in here that I found to be eye-opening, that we are exceeding 2010, which was a record year in the main development region for anomalous warmth, we are above that benchmark already by 0.3 Celsius. That doesn't sound like much, but it is a lot of extra energy. Trust me. 2010, a very big year in terms of ACE, lots of activity, but no hurricanes hit the United States. That's interesting, isn't it? You never know. So that's an interesting little nugget there. The El Nino fading into La Nina, probably going to do so pretty rapidly. And then the numbers. And when he's talking about lead, follow, get out of the way, we don't really know where the activity is going to end up. But all of this data, and I encourage you to read this. Again, I'll put a link in the description for today. These are the years that show up. Basically, you could just call it their analogs, right? And look at some of these. 05, 98, 2010, 99, 11, 95, 17. Those are some big years, and that's showing up in a lot of different data sets around the research community. And all of those years, all of those, in terms of trying to figure out the get out of the way part, that's his sort of analogy that he's using here. Do we need to get out of the way? We don't know yet. That's implying we don't understand this far in advance about potential tracks. But those analogs are all years where we did have major impacts, except 2010. 05, 17, they speak for themselves, I would certainly hope, as well as some of the other years. But interestingly enough, 2010, we didn't have any hurricane impacts in the United States. Here's something to keep in mind. In terms of ACE, and this is also something that caught my eye, the most likely ACE this year, accumulated cyclone energy, 195. That's a terrible... Trying to write with my right hand, and I'm left-handed, and a mouse nevertheless. But 195 is the most likely value, and I'll just highlight it right there. With the potential of near 300, that would be crazy. So it looks like quite the active season coming. We'll get a better look at that in a little over 2 weeks from Dr. Phil Klotzbach. And again, I encourage you to read this very, very thorough work that goes into this. Again, it's not just throwing darts at a board or whatever. And I'll put a link, third time I'm saying it, in today's description for you. All right? All right. Moving on along to severe weather, because that is also a problem. Our good friend of the project, CJ, put together this infographic. Just giving you an outline, pulling it right from SPC data, Storm Prediction Center, an enhanced risk down, you guessed it, in the deep south there, just north of the Gulf Coast region. Alexandria all the way over to Hattiesburg and many areas in between. Be on the lookout. Make sure your phone is charged. You get those alerts. Don't turn them off. Don't ignore them. You know the drill. Be prepared. Be alert. Be ready. Because severe weather, especially these tornadoes, I don't know, something about them, they give me nightmares. You have to be very, very careful. And your best line of defense is just simply paying attention. From the SPC, the tornado threat, fairly substantial today in this little hatched area down here, 10%. And we've seen some nasty ones in this region. You know that. Don't want to leave out the 2% up here in parts of Iowa and extreme northwest Missouri. The wind, downburst winds, things like that, also prominent. Luckily, not a big hail day. It's just the setup. There will be some hail, but that is not the primary concern. The big concern is the tornado threat. So please pay attention. What about tomorrow? Things become less problematic, is a good way to put it, and even less problematic from there as we go through day 3 and then finally days 4 through 8. Nothing showing up just yet. But as we get into April, especially mid-April and beyond, some of the folks that I pay attention to closely that know a lot more about severe weather than I do are seeming to believe that mid-April and beyond we could have a pretty big uptick. It has a lot to do with the pattern. Of course it does, just like with hurricanes. Hurricanes don't just form out of nothing. Sometimes they do, but it's usually the pattern gives us the favorability that leads to hurricane formation. Same thing with severe weather. You get your random days where there are just general thunderstorms and you could get a spin up, a big hail event or whatever, but normally your big outbreaks are well forecast in the pattern. All right? Next, the Great American Eclipse is coming. Another link for you today, greatamericaneclipse.com. It is going to be incredible if the weather will simply help us out. All the way through the Pacific, Mazatlan, a lot of people probably booked down there, through Mexico, across the border, into the United States, across Texas, up through Arkansas and beyond, going right over Buffalo, and then exiting up in northern New England through Atlantic Canada. If the weather will just, come on, just one day, please. I am going to be down here in the San Antonio area, and then I'm going to go over, and hopefully you folks can tell me how you pronounce this, Kerrville, or Carville, right there, right in the heart of the path of totality. That's where I'm headed, right through here. Me and probably 500,000 other people. And if all goes well, and again, the weather will just not be cloudy. It can be 110 degrees, I don't care. 22 degrees that morning, it won't be, but just don't be cloudy. That's all we ask. Anywhere in that shadow, this literal shadow here, our programmer Will Woodgate put that together for us. Let me just back it out. The path of totality, that's what that's showing. And if you're on the edge and you're at 99.3% and you're like, that's fine, I'm good. Nope, it's not. 100% means you get the corona, and it is absolutely incredible. I saw it in 2017 with several of my children, and it is extremely moving. Remember, these eclipses would change civilization way back many moons ago. You see what I did there? Many moons ago. Eclipse, moon, you get it? Seriously, it was thought that it heralded the end of the world. Sound like Neil Tyson deGrasse there, whatever his name is, the astrophysicist guy. Seriously, though, it's an incredible thing. I hope you get to see it. If you're in the path already, you have sunshine, clear skies that day, and for about 4 minutes, depending on where you are. Right in the center line, it's about 4 minutes, plus or minus. Closer to the edges, you have less totality. It is one of the most incredible displays that Mother Nature can provide. So we don't know for sure what it's going to be like weather-wise, but we can at least take a look. This is pretty far out in the future. We don't want it to look like this. This is today. Now, Carville or Kerrville, whatever, right in here, we'd be good if the eclipse were today. That would be good. Everybody up through this area, pretty good up through here, not so good through here. So what we need is a nice, clear, like huge high-pressure area, just setting up shop. It's really hard to do over the country, something like that. You can have a front out here and then some storm off the coast and then big high pressure in between. Can it happen? It's possible. Looking at the GFS today, and it's interesting because there's the satellite picture, there's the model, and that's what you get. That's today. There's your mid-latitude storm, your extratropical storm, whatever you want to call it. And then offshore, there's another low out here. Pretty intense, by the way. But we need all that to just get out of the way and stay out of the way. So let's move this forward through time, and as we get out, this is beyond 300 hours, and just like with snowstorms and hurricanes, you know it's going to change. But here we are into April. There's April 4th. That's no good for, there's dogs barking outside. Must be another dog walking by, whatever. That's no good. Let's get that out of here. Now we're up to the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and we knock on the door of the 8th. This is so, like, it kills me. So that's the 7th, and here we are, 0Z on the 8th, the morning, and then there it is, afternoon, the 8th. I see some greens down here. This is just talking about precipitation rates. There's a low sitting in New Mexico, and then you have, that's the look of it. I don't like that. That's not good. And let's look at the upper forecast real quick and see what that looks like. 500 millibar. No. I don't want to see any energy, no vorticity. We need ridging all over the place right through here. And I'm going to be selfish and say, come on, for us in the Lone Star State, please. Anyhow, we'll be watching this. We got to get this much closer, maybe a week out, and then we'll get an idea of the pattern. And then I'm really predicting that if it's going to be cloudy in a certain area and sunny in somewhere else, you're going to have eclipse nomads that are going to be traveling possibly by the hundreds of thousands to get to the clear area. And that is going to present a lot of problems. Logistics, gas, people's schedules, they got to get back and fly home, whatever. This is going to be a really big deal. And the weather is 100% in control of what happens. Isn't that fascinating? I think it is. Next week's video, I'm going to really touch upon this more and more. Zip it, dogs. That's annoying. Dogs need you probably can hear them through this nice mic. It just bothers me. Anyway, hey, the big dogs are barking. Maybe they're barking at the clear sunshine outside, and they'll bring me some good luck. Anyway, we'll watch it, see what happens. Please, 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 we just need some clear weather. I'll talk about it again in a week. Finally, hail project news. Yes, we're going to start observing and studying hail at point-blank range, up close and personal. It is my new, storm surge and hurricanes have been like 20 years. Well, this is the new. We're still going to do all that, of course. But hail is fascinating. It is very damaging. Not particularly deadly as long as you stay out of the way. But last week, I got a chance to go over here to the IBHS, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, a little bit ways south of Rock Hill, South Carolina. 90-something acres they've got out in rural areas of South Carolina where they do research and studies on weather and how the weather impacts building materials, mitigation standards, you name it. Met with some hail scientists, and I was just amazed. I mean, I was like, you took a kid to like the biggest Toys R Us in the world or something and said, hey, whatever you want. It was unreal learning from people. The Northern Hail Project, some Canadians had come down. We got to see the hail cannons, the different roof shingle tile stuff that they do. I was just absolutely stunned by what they are doing. And it really has motivated me even more to launch our project and to get out there and to try to do some useful things as well as some fun things. I think the more fun we have with science, and you think about some of these people that do science on TV and on social media, Dr. Neil that I talked about, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that does these Instagram reels that are very, very popular. Science doesn't always have to be boring, okay? And you can have the rigorous testing, and then you can have fun with it. And in this case, that's what we're really going to focus on to get people to pay attention. And I'm very much hoping to shed some light on what these folks are doing. They're going to be out there doing some experiments as well in mid to late May, and we're going to be doing a lot talking about it with Fox Weather. Very excited about that. So get ready. Once I get back from that eclipse, if everything goes right, maybe I'm going to be really angry with the weather because it completely, we won't go there. But we'll hope for the best. But yeah, when I get back, basically April 10th on, first chance I get, I'm heading out, and I'll talk more about what we're doing, how we're going to do this, how we're going to protect the vehicle. It's all a process, but the Hail Project, look for that. You'll be able to follow along live on YouTube. We'll make some videos at the end of each expedition, show you what we learned, how we're capturing data, how we're measuring hail, how we are saving the hailstones, and potentially, maybe, you never know, finding a record hailstone. That'll be part of the adventure as we observe and study. It's trying to make me disappear. This phenomenon called hail. All right? Had an email today or a text from one of our supporters in Florida, just kind of reminding me to mention, how do you support what we do? Most of what we do is crowdfunded. I do have a partnership with Fox Weather. That does provide me some income, of course. But all of our equipment and the majority of the funding over the last 6 years has come through Patreon. And this wonderful community that has joined up, between 500 and 1,000 strong. It just depends on the season, how much interest there is. But a really good base. And every single piece of equipment that we have in our arsenal, all of it, all the GoPros, all the anemometers, the Tacoma that I drive, that's you guys that have supported this. It's 100% crowdfunded. And that is remarkable. So how do you do it? How do you become a part of it? And what do you get? Well, you get the Patreon app, or go to patreon.com/HurricaneTrack, and you join up that way. You can join for free, and you get the posts that I make. You see all those. But then when you want to invest and become a partner and a contributor that way, money's what makes the world go round. You can do that, and then you can back off later. I love that there's that flexibility. You're not locked into a subscription. This is not a subscription. It is a community. I like that word right there. And Patreon's been around for a number of years. A lot of successful podcasters, artists, musicians, you name it, and even from some folks in the weather world have utilized Patreon to grow their community. And if you do join, you get access to our Discord, the live cams, exclusive podcast episodes, that awesome Eclipse map. That's all part of the Patreon subscription at the $4 level and up. That's how you do it. Patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. Get the app. You can follow along in there. And then you can be on our Hurricane Track Insider site as we go into severe weather season and then eventually hurricane season. We take you there. We don't just do these videos and then that's it. We actually take you out in it. One of the things I've been so proud of over the last 20 to 25 years. All right? Told you today was going to be a big update. Lots to cover. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. That doesn't cost anything. You just hit the subscribe button. And please share these videos. Let people know what we're doing. That means a lot. It's not for my ego. You know, I'm not getting millions of views. I'm like, yeah. I just appreciate that people appreciate what I do and what my team does. But people don't know if you don't share. And if you like what we're doing, just share it. That's it. All right? Still at Hurricane Track on Twitter. It'll always be Twitter to me. And I've already mentioned Patreon. So there you go. All right. Next, I will speak to you from Texas. Why Texas? This week I'm heading... Let me just come back on before I sign off. I forgot. Got to mention this. This week I'm going to Florida, starting tomorrow for the National Hurricane Conference. Meetings with different people on our team. Then I'm going to Texas for the National Tropical Weather Conference. So next Monday I will be in the Houston-Galveston area. So next Monday I'll be in Texas. So that's my segue to get out of here. All right? So, as always, thanks for tuning in from all of us at Hurricane Track. We appreciate it. I'll talk to you again a week from today from the Lone Star State.